His breath felt warm on my skin, his hands strong as they drew me closer. Emily watched, her lips slightly parted, her eyes dark with unspoken thoughts. Jake's fingers tightened around my waist, his heart beat quick against mine. I turned to Emily, brushing a slow hand down her arm, sensing the electric tension between us. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" I whispered. Her breath caught, and Jake exhaled sharply. In that moment, the final barrier between us vanished. Before we start, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your simple action helps this channel grow and ensures you won't miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed, restless, my skin burning with a need I couldn't satisfy. I wasn't used to this. Cold sheets, quiet evenings, falling asleep without the warmth of another body tangled with mine. It wasn't just loneliness, it was hunger. A deep aching kind that settled between my thighs, keeping me awake, making my fingers trail over my own skin just to remember what it felt like to be touched. I wasn't shy about my desires. Never had been. Some women bury that part of themselves as they age, letting it fade into something they pretend not to need. Not me. I still wanted it, craved it. The slow burn of anticipation, the pulse of a gaze lingering over my body, the kind of heat that made my breath catch and my skin tingle. Then I saw him, Jake. He was outside, shirtless, working on his car, strong, effortless, completely at ease. I stood at my window, watching, biting my lip as warmth pulled deep in my stomach. It had been too long, and Jake, he was everything I'd been starving for. I wasn't reckless. I knew how to take my time, how to build tension until it became unbearable. It started small. A glance held a second too long, a casual stretch when I knew he was looking, my dress riding just high enough to tease, an innocent laugh that lingered as I let my fingers trail down his arm just barely. Jake noticed. I could see it in the way his eyes flickered to me when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his breath hitched when I leaned in too close, the way his jaw tensed when I spoke in low, knowing tones. Emily, sweet little Emily, was none the wiser. She greeted me with bright smiles, unaware of the heat simmering beneath the surface, unaware that every time Jake looked at me, it wasn't just casual. It was charged. I wasn't looking for love or commitment, I just wanted to feel it again. The pull, the anticipation, the thrill of knowing I could make a man lose himself completely. And Jake, he was already slipping. It started with an opportunity. Emily was out of town, Jake was alone, and I was waiting. I timed it perfectly. An evening walk. A casual, accidental bump into him on the sidewalk. He caught me by the waist, steadying me, his grip firm, warm. The way his hands lingered sent a thrill through me. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. I exhaled slowly, just enough to make my chest rise in a way that caught his attention, letting him notice. "Yeah," I murmured, placing a hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath my fingertips. "Just got a little dizzy." His gaze flickered to my lips. I saw it, felt it. "Maybe you should sit down," he said. I bit back a smirk. "Perfect." "My place is just down the street," I offered smoothly, tilting my head slightly, letting my hair fall just enough to frame my face. "Come inside with me." He hesitated for a second too long. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the tension in his stance, but he followed. Of course he did. Inside, the air was thick, charged. I poured him a drink, deliberately brushing against him as I set the glass down. Every movement was calculated, just close enough, just teasing enough to blur the lines between an accident and an invitation. I leaned against the counter, swirling my wine, letting my dress ride up slightly as I crossed my legs. His eyes dipped lower, and when they met mine again, there was no hesitation. "What are we doing?" he asked, his voice tight, conflicted. I smirked, setting my glass down. "Whatever we want." The space between us disappeared in an instant. His lips crashed against mine, his hands gripping my waist, pulling me flush against him. I moaned into his mouth, threading my fingers through his hair, tugging just enough to make him groan. His hands roamed over my hips, my back, sliding beneath my dress with an urgency that sent heat straight to my core. I pushed him onto the couch, straddling him in one smooth motion. He let out a sharp breath as I rolled my hips against him, teasing, torturing. His fingers dug into my thighs, his eyes dark with hunger. "This is crazy," he rasped against my neck, his lips trailing down, sending shivers through me. I laughed, arching into him, gasping as his teeth grazed my skin. "Then stop," I challenged. He didn't. He couldn't. And as I rocked against him, as his hands explored every inch of me, as we lost ourselves completely in the moment, I knew this was exactly what I had been craving. And now that I had it, I wasn't about to stop. Once wasn't enough, not even close. That first night ignited something inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. The thrill, the fire, the way my body responded like it had been starving. And Jake? He was just as hooked. The next time I didn't bother with an excuse. I sent a single text. Minutes later, he was at my door. No hesitation. No guilt. The second the door clicked shut, his hands were on me, hot, urgent, possessive. I barely had time to gasp before he lifted me, pressing me against the wall, his body slotting perfectly against mine. "This is wrong," he whispered, but his mouth was already at my neck, his hands sliding beneath my dress. I smirked, tilting my head back. "Then why does it feel so good?" He groaned, gripping my thighs, pulling me tighter against him. And I laughed, breathlessly. I loved this. The tension, the rush, the way he couldn't keep his hands off me. We never made it far. Sometimes it was against the kitchen counter, sometimes on the couch, sometimes in the hallway, clothes barely pushed aside in our desperation. Every moment was fevered, frantic, pure need. Jake was strong, eager, relentless. He handled me like he was making up for lost time, like every second without me had been slow torture. And I soaked it in. The way he gripped me like he couldn't get enough, the way his lips dragged over my skin, the way he lost himself completely in me. I felt worshipped, devoured. And when it was over, when I lay beneath him, spent and breathless, my body humming with satisfaction, I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive. I stretched, my fingers tracing lazy patterns over his chest, a slow, satisfied smile curving my lips. "Again," I murmured, rolling onto him, loving the way his breath hitched, the way his hands instantly found my waist. Because I wasn't done with him, not even close. The affair was everything I craved, reckless, thrilling, indulgent. I had Jake completely lost in me, his body and mind drawn into the heat we created. He wasn't just responding to my touch, he was addicted to it. But what I didn't see coming was Emily. The knock on my door was sharp, unexpected. My pulse jumped as I straightened my dress, smoothing out invisible creases. When I opened it, Emily stood there. Her face wasn't twisted in rage. Her voice wasn't shaking with betrayal. No, she looked composed. Too composed. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping past me before I could answer. I shut the door, my heartbeat hammering. "Emily, I know," she said. The words settled between us, heavy, undeniable. I stayed silent, waiting for the slap, the accusations, the confrontation I had expected. But Emily just sat down, crossing one leg over the other, her eyes steady on me. "You and Jake," she said, her voice low, almost calculating. "How long?" I swallowed. Lying was pointless. "A little while," she nodded slowly as if she had already pieced it together. A beat of silence stretched, the air charged with something I couldn't place, and then she surprised me. "I don't want to lose him," she admitted, "but I also don't want to pretend I don't see what's happening." I leaned forward, intrigued. "Then what do you want?" Emily's lips curled slightly, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before, a glint of curiosity, of daring. "I want in." My breath caught. I had expected anger, tears, a messy ending. Not this. "You want—" Emily tilted her head, watching me carefully. "Jake's drawn to you. I get it. I've seen how he looks at you, how he loses himself. But what if we don't have to choose?" Her words wrapped around me, warm, intoxicating. My pulse quickened. Was this happening? She smirked as if reading my thoughts. So, Sophie, are you willing to share? The night air was thick, charged with something electric as the three of us sat in my dimly lit living room. Emily was relaxed, leaning back against the couch, her fingers tracing slow patterns on her own knee. Jake sat between us, his eyes shifting, waiting, unsure but undeniably intrigued. I reached for my wineglass, taking a slow sip. "Tell me, Emily," I murmured, letting my voice drop into something softer, something smoother. "What is it exactly that you want?" She turned to me, her lips parting slightly. "I want to understand," she admitted. "I want to feel what he feels when he's with you." Her fingers ghosted along the arm of the couch, her gaze locked onto mine. It was an invitation, a challenge, and I had no intention of denying her. I leaned closer, slow, deliberate. Jake's breath hitched between us. "Then let me show you." I reached out, my fingertips grazing Emily's cheek, testing. Her lips parted just slightly, a sharp inhale betraying the nerves that trembled beneath her composure. Jake was frozen, watching. And then Emily moved. She turned into my touch, pressing closer, letting her lips brush against mine. Not hesitant, not shy, but exploring, testing the waters of something entirely new. Jake exhaled sharply, his body shifting as he watched. I deepened the kiss just enough to tease, to let her feel the slow burn of surrender. And she did, melting into it, her fingers tightening on my arm. Jake couldn't resist any longer. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, his breath hot against my skin. I smiled against Emily's lips before breaking away just enough to glance at him. "Enjoying the view?" I murmured. Jake groaned, his fingers tightening around me as he kissed me with the same hunger I had come to know so well. But this time, Emily was there. Her presence adding to the thrill, the heat. Fingers tangled, bodies pressed, every touch igniting something new, something unspoken. Emily's hand skimmed over Jake's shoulders, her curiosity transforming into something bolder. I turned to her, watching the way she looked at me, the way her breath hitched when I ran my fingers down her arm. I smirked. "I think you like this more than you expected." She didn't deny it. We moved together, an unspoken rhythm taking over, blending into something seamless. A shared desire, a connection that none of us had expected but all of us craved. Jake's hands roamed, guiding, taking, as Emily and I explored, learning each other's edges, each other's reactions. There were no doubts now, no hesitations, just pleasure, just three bodies tangled in a perfect storm, giving in to something deeper, something raw and untamed, and the best part, it was just the beginning. Morning light poured in, painting lazy shadows over our tangled limbs. The sheets smelled like warmth, like comfort, like us. Jake stirred beside me, his hand sliding over my hip, his touch familiar, possessive. Across from me, Emily stretched, her fingers grazing mine as she let out a soft hum of satisfaction. I smiled, no guilt, no regrets, just something real, something right. Emily turned her head toward me, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. "So," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep, "I think I see why Jake got so hooked." Jake chuckled, pressing a kiss to my shoulder before reaching for Emily, pulling her into his chest. "Unexpected," she added, running a lazy finger down his arm. "But perfect." And it was. We had rewritten the rules, created something that belonged only to us. Not a secret, not a betrayal, just pleasure, just connection, just ours. As I lay there feeling the heat of their bodies beside me, the satisfaction thrumming through my veins, I knew one thing for sure. This was exactly where I was meant to be. That's it. No regrets, no second guessing, just three people who found exactly what they were looking for. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Was this the perfect ending, or do you think it was bound to fall apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps this channel grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I have to tell you about the most unbelievable night of my life. You know those rare nights that feel extraordinary, the ones that make your whole body tingle just remembering them? Well, I walked into this bar I'd passed by countless times, and what happened next was something I've never felt before. I'm still riding that wave of excitement even days later. Brace yourselves because this story is going to be intense. If you love stories that challenge limits and get your heart pounding, you'll want to stick around for this. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. Trust me, you won't regret it. So I'd never stepped inside this bar before. You know the kind. One of those places you walk by every day, always telling yourself you'll check it out eventually, but never do. It had this vibe, like the soft light spilling onto the sidewalk was practically calling me in. And after the day I had, I needed something different. Work had been wearing me down, and I was over the routine of emails, deadlines, and fake smiles. I needed something real, something that made me feel alive. So I walked in. The first thing I noticed was the amazing scent in the air. Citrus mixed with wood polish, subtle but refreshing. And then, holy, the bartender. This guy looked like he could have been a lumberjack on the side or something. His sleeves were rolled up, showing off muscular forearms, and when he looked at me, my stomach did flips. I sat down at the bar, suddenly self-conscious of my skirt, which felt a little tighter than I had realized. "First time here?" he asked, his voice smooth like honey. I just nodded because honestly, my heart was pounding so hard I didn't trust myself to say anything. We started chatting, well, mostly me talking, but the way he asked questions wasn't small talk. He actually made me feel truly seen for the first time in forever. What did I do? Did I like it? Why tonight? I found myself leaning in, laughing more than usual, feeling like I'd shed years of adulting. "I'm Liam," he said, extending his hand for a shake. His grip was firm and warm, and when our hands lingered just a little longer than necessary, it was clear there was a connection. Then, plot twist. Jack walked in. Picture the kind of guy who doesn't have to try to grab attention. Messy blonde hair that somehow looked perfect. A leather jacket casually thrown over his shoulder, and this confidence that took over the room. He sat down a couple of stools away and ordered a whiskey neat, of course. When he looked at me and smiled, I knew I was in trouble in the best possible way. And just like that, I found myself in the middle of something new and thrilling. Jack joined in the conversation, and I could feel Liam getting a bit tense, not in an obvious way, but you could tell. His questions became more pointed, more personal, but Jack wasn't backing down. The conversation turned into this electric back and forth that I couldn't look away from. By the time I finished my drink, it was clear what was happening. They were competing for my attention. That's when it hit me. I could leave with one of them, or I could do something completely out of character, something that made my cheeks burn just thinking about it. Was I really about to do this? I looked at Liam, then Jack. They were both waiting, watching me, and I said, why not both? Liam's place was exactly what you'd expect. Leather couch, vinyl records everywhere, and this amazing scent of cedar and fresh laundry. Jack walked in like he owned the place, tossed his jacket on a chair, and suddenly everything felt real. The click of the door closing behind us changed everything. The couch was soft, but everything else was pure electricity. Their hands, their breathing, it was overwhelming in the best way. I was hyper-aware of everything. Liam was in front of me, his hand sliding up my thigh like he'd done this 1,000 times, while Jack was behind me, his hands tracing down my back in a way that made me shiver. Liam's lips found my neck first, his breath hot against my skin, sending shockwaves through me. Jack started working on my skirt zipper, each tug promising more. My heart was racing, but there was no way I was stopping this. I leaned into both of them, letting their touch anchor me in the moment. Jack's grip on my hips was firm but controlled, like he was holding back. Liam, on the other hand, was completely different. His hands were everywhere, and the circles his thumbs made were driving me wild. The contrast between them was intoxicating, like being caught between two types of perfect. Jack's stubble grazed my shoulder, and the feeling of Liam pressing closer, his warmth surrounding me, was electric. Clothes came off accompanied by gasps and whispers that said more than words could ever express. Their touches became more urgent, Liam's grip tightening on my hips in a way that kept me grounded while my mind was spinning. Jack's lips found the back of my neck, his hands exploring with a reverence that completely contrasted with his heated breaths. They moved together so seamlessly, like they had choreographed it, with Liam's strength tempered by surprising gentleness, while Jack steadied me as my breathing grew faster. It was overwhelming, but in the most perfect way, like a symphony I never knew I needed. The intimacy hit me in waves, hands, lips, warmth, and then this realization of how natural it all felt. All the nervous energy from earlier disappeared. The way they touched me, like they knew exactly what I needed, was addictive. Everything outside of that moment faded away, and all I could hear was our breathing, skin on skin, the couch creaking beneath us. The heat between us built with each touch and kiss, pulling me deeper into this endless moment that still somehow ended too soon. We just lay there afterward, catching our breath, as reality began to creep back in. Liam got up first to grab some water, leaving me with Jack. He lounged back on the couch, looking completely satisfied, with his arms stretched out and that smirk that made me blush all over again. When Liam returned with the water, his fingers brushed mine, and the look between us said everything. No awkwardness, no pressure, just an unspoken understanding that whatever this was, it was exactly what we all needed. Jack got up shortly after, grabbed his jacket, and teased me with a, "Don't get too comfortable without me," before kissing my temple and leaving behind that intoxicating scent of leather and whiskey. I stayed just a minute longer, feeling the couch beneath my fingers, still trying to process everything. Liam walked me to the door, gave me a look I still can't fully understand, and said, "Take care." Stepping out into the night air, the city felt different, more alive, but also oddly peaceful. My pulse was still racing from their touch, and yeah, there was a small voice wondering if I'd crossed some line, but honestly, I just let myself ride that high all the way home. I still get butterflies when I think about sharing this story. If you felt that same electricity, smash that like button and drop a comment about your most unforgettable night. And hey, if you want more stories to get your pulse racing, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Until next time, keep chasing those wild nights.